In our lesson today, we're going to learn about adding signed numbers. Okay, and when I say signed numbers, that means I'm going to be including positives and negatives in my addition problems. Okay, in elementary school, you worked on adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing rational numbers that were not negative. Today, we will begin looking at including negative numbers into these operations, and we're going to start with addition. In order to add signed numbers, we need to begin with the idea of opposites. Opposites are two numbers that are the same distance from zero. Opposites always add up to zero and are called a zero-sum pair. Okay, so let's take a look at our first example underneath. Okay, this should help us with the idea of adding signed numbers. Okay, look at each set of numbers in A, B, and C. I want you to write the answer to each addition problem below. Okay, in letter A, we have -8 plus 8. In letter B, we have 1/4 plus -1/4. And in letter C, we have -215 plus 215. The numbers look the same, except in one case, one of the numbers is positive and the other number is negative. Okay, so let's think about what the answer to these three addition problems would be. Well, if you said that the answer to each one of these problems was 0, you would be correct. Okay? Each pair of numbers above are opposites because the numbers are the same distance from 0. -8 is 8 units to the left of 0. 8 is 8 units to the right of 0. 1/4 is a quarter unit to the right. -1/4 is a quarter unit to the left of 0. -215 is 215 units to the left of 0, and 215 is 215 units to the right of 0. These pairs of numbers have a sum of 0, which we call a zero-sum pair. Opposites are also called additive inverses. Okay, so these numbers have three different names. They're opposites, they're additive inverses, and they're a zero-sum pair because when I add them together, I get an answer of 0. All right, negative numbers are used to represent having less than 0 of something. Okay, and that's going to help us with our next example. In example 2, we're told that in a bank, deposits are represented with a positive number and withdrawals are represented with negative numbers. Deposit means you put money in the bank, withdraw means you take money out of the bank. When Samuel opened up his savings account, his balance was $0. Samuel deposited $160, and 2 weeks later, he withdrew $160. Why would Samuel's balance be 0 again? Okay, well, if we start at 0 and we deposit $160, okay, that's going to be represented by a positive 160. Okay, and then if we withdraw $160, well, we're going to add -160 to that. These numbers, again, are opposites, they're additive inverses, and when I add them together, they make a zero-sum pair. So why would Samuel's balance be 0 again? Well, if you put $160 in and then take out $160, you are back to 0. Okay, it's as simple as that. Putting $160 in is 160 positive. Taking out $160 is 160 negative. If I put in 160 and then take it out, I'm right back at 0. In example 3, we're told that Samuel's balance is $0. He then withdraws $15 for dinner and also withdraws $10 for a movie ticket. What is Samuel's balance after the two withdrawals? Okay, and the thing that we need to remember here is that when we withdraw money, we represent it with a negative number. So he first withdraws $15 for dinner, so that's going to be a -15. And then he withdraws $10 for a movie ticket, which is going to be represented by a -10. And to figure out what his balance is going to be, we're going to add these two numbers together. I like to put the second negative in parentheses here so you don't confuse it with a subtraction here. So -15 plus -10, well, what would his balance be? Well, I have 15 negatives, and then I have 10 more negatives, which means I have a total of 25 negatives. Samuel's balance would be represented by the integer negative 25. This example shows how you add two negative numbers. If you combine negative numbers together, all you do is add how many negatives you have. We have 15 negatives here, we have 10 negatives here. 15 plus 10 is 25, so we have a total of 25 negatives. We just learned that if you add two negative numbers together, all you have to do is count the total number of negatives that you have. So in example 4, we're going to write the answer to each addition problem below. Each problem shows the addition of two negative numbers. In letter A, we have negative 3 plus negative 6, okay? Negatives and negatives make more negatives, and 3 plus 6 is 9. So negative 3 plus negative 6 is negative 9. In example B, we have negative 3/8 plus negative 9/4. And again, since I'm adding negatives, I know my answer will be negative, so let's get that out of the way first. And now we need to remember about adding fractions. In order to add fractions, you have to have the same denominator. Here they're different, so we have to figure out a common denominator for eighths and fourths. The common denominator would actually be 8, so I can keep negative 3/8 exactly the same. And then I'm going to change negative 9/4 into something over 8. Well, 4 times 2 is 8, so 9 times 2 is 18. So that's going to become negative 18/8. And now again, all I'm doing is adding these numbers together. Negative 3/8 plus negative 18/8 is going to give me negative 21/8. Okay, and then if you wanted to write that as a mixed number, all right, 8 goes into 21 2 times. 8 times 2 is 16, which means that there are still 5/8 left over. So the answer here would be negative 2 and 5/8. In letter C, we have negative 10 and 5/10 plus negative 2 and 25/100. Again, we're adding two negatives. My answer will be negative. Let's add these fractions, or excuse me, these decimals together. 10 and 5/10. 2 and 25/100. Remember that when you add or subtract with decimals, you have to line the decimal points up. I have an empty spot above this 5 that I'm going to replace with a 0. 0 plus 5 is 5. 5 plus 2 is 7. Bring your decimal point down. 0 plus 2 is 2. And we bring down the 1. So we have negative 12 and 75/100. In our previous examples, all of the numbers that we've added together were negative, okay? They were both negative. What happens if you add a positive number and a negative number that are not opposites? For example, in number 5, we have 7 plus negative 4. These numbers are not opposites. One of them is positive, one of them is negative. To help us find the sum, we're going to use a diagram. The following symbols will be used in the diagram. If we have a positive symbol, that represents positive 1. And if we have a negative symbol, that's going to represent negative 1. Together, these symbols form a zero-sum pair. If you have one positive and one negative, together it equals 0. Okay? So, to help us find the sum, we're going to use that diagram. Let's see if we can figure out what the sum is going to be. So use the diagram to find the sum of 7 plus negative 4. Cross out all zero-sum pairs. In the top row, I have 7 positives for 7. In the bottom row, I have 4 negatives for negative 4. And I need to cross out all of the zero-sum pairs. Remember, a zero-sum pair is a positive with a negative. So right here at the beginning, a positive with a negative, that's equal to 0. I have another zero-sum pair, and another zero-sum pair, and I have one more zero-sum pair. That leaves me with 3 positives. So when I add 7 with negative 4, I get an answer of positive 3. So in our last example, we just saw that 7 plus negative 4 was equal to 3. When the signs are different, the sum relates to a subtraction. Okay? Can you tell what subtraction problem this is related to? This sum is the same as what subtraction problem? Okay, well, 7 plus negative 4, hopefully you see that that's very similar to the subtraction problem that you already know, which is 7 minus 4. Okay, in each case, we're going to get an answer of 3. You learned 7 minus 4 a long time ago, and our diagram helped us figure out when we crossed out the zero-sum pairs that there would be 3 positives left over. Example 6 asks us, or tells us that for each problem, we're going to draw a diagram similar to the one that we drew in example number 5. We're going to state the sum after crossing out the zero-sum pairs. So in example A, I have -9 plus 6. Okay, so I'm going to start by drawing 9 negatives for -9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 negatives. Now I need 6 positives for positive 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And now if I cross out the zero-sum pairs, I'm going to get the answer to this addition problem. There's a zero sum, there's another, another. Cross out all of those zero-sum pairs. What's left over? Well, we have 3 negatives left over, so -9 plus 6 is equal to -3. And again, this is related to a subtraction problem. When the signs are different, it's related to a subtraction. 9 minus 6 is equal to 3. There were 3 negatives left over, that's why we get -3. Okay, go ahead and do the same thing for B, C, and D. In example B, I've got 8 positives for 8. I have 3 negatives for -3. And now let's cross out the zero-sum pairs. 1, 2, 3 zero-sum pairs. And notice that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 positives left over. 8 plus -3 is equal to 5. And again, when the signs are different, it's a subtraction. 8 minus 3, there's our 5, and they're positive because we had the positives left over. Example C is -1 plus 5, so I've got my 1 negative, I've got my 5 positives, and there's only one zero-sum pair this time to cross out. That equals 0, so it's gone. And notice what we have left. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 positives. -1 plus 5 is equal to 4. Finally, in example D, we have 2 plus -4. So I've got my 2 positives, I've got my 4 negatives. Let's cross out our zero-sum pairs. 1 0 there, there's another 0, and we have 2 negatives left over. 2 plus -4 is equal to -2. And again, when the signs are different like that, that relates to a subtraction. 4 minus 2 is 2, and they were negative because we had negatives left over. Okay, so pay attention to your signs. If you're adding 2 negative numbers together, just count how many negatives you have in total. And if you have 2 numbers with different signs, then you're going to do a subtraction, okay, and look at what you've got left over, okay? Are they positives or are they negative? Draw those diagrams to help you out.